Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to talk quickly about the King's move and people's opinions of it. So basically, for the people who don't know what a King's move is in arm wrestling, doing is you're lowering your body and you're allowing your arm to fully extend. You're still keeping your elbow on the pad. You're keeping pronation in your wrist, and you're sort of at an angle like this, where your shoulder, in theory, should be above the table. But because you've got leverage with your elbow on the pad, the opponent can't push your arm down. So if you're already extended fully and you've got pronation there, the opponent cannot actually get through your arm to the pin pad. The only way it would actually go down is if your arm was to break in an armbar position. That's why it's called the King's move, that you're willing to sacrifice your arm to win the match. So, what do I think about the move? Well, it's part of the sport. It's within the rules. I can see the people's opinions on this as they don't like it. They think that it's unfair. It is within the rules, therefore, it is fair. Until the rules change, which I don't think that they should, it is a legal move. You're allowed to do it. We're seeing a little bit of modification on the move as well. We had our tournament last weekend, and one of our top pullers, Sam Burnett, used a variation of that. Instead of being just in a pronation move, he sort of turned it more into a hook. So he was extended, but in more of a hook position. An interesting variation on that move. Basically, at the end of the day, this is what I can see happening with the move. At the moment, not that many people are using it. Therefore, not as many people are being exposed to it. Eventually, someone is going to figure out a perfect counter to that move. Now, whether or not it's just the traditional climbing, regripping, climbing, and getting enough height to be able to press down, get through the move, that seems to be a traditional defense at the moment. But there will be something, and someone will come up with a counter to that move. This will be a natural progression in the sport. Somebody will come up with some sort of idea, some sort of move, some sort of variation. And instead of banning that move, or instead of saying that move shouldn't be allowed, let's change the rules, what you need to do is innovate and come up with a counter that will attack, overcome that new variation. And you're going to see this in combat sports across the world. You look at the UFC, I mean, the first few UFC events were won by Royce Gracie, who was using jiu-jitsu, and nobody really knew what jiu-jitsu was. It was fighting on the ground, and all of a sudden, a guy gets taken down and he's being strangled. No one knew what that was. Eventually, you saw a natural progression was that wrestlers were learning enough jiu-jitsu that they could take someone to the ground and not get submitted, and then use ground and pound, and then that became the sort of dominant factor. And then the kickboxers learnt enough wrestling to not get taken to the ground, and they were able to keep the fight standing, and they were able to win by knockout and standing. So then eventually you sort of see some variations that were coming, a bit of a wall and stall seemed to be implemented for a while, where you would push your opponent to the cage and you sort of, doing these tiny little jabs and punches and just pressuring. Eventually somebody learned to counter to that, and you see guys like Travis Brown that were, when people were pressing him against the cage, he was elbowing them in the head. So there's always something new that comes up. Instead of banning things, instead of saying we shouldn't allow this, you should embrace it. Say, okay, look, this is something that somebody's using that we don't like, but it's effective, it's within the rules. Therefore, instead of saying let's ban it, what we need to do is say, how can we figure out how to conquer that move? How can we figure out a better counter to that move? And I don't see a lot of people really working on that issue. I see a lot of people complaining about that issue and saying that it's not a fair move and that it should be banned. But instead of complaining, instead of saying this is not fair, you are completely within your rights to go to your training session, get somebody to King's move against you, and start practicing some variations on how to beat it. Because there will be somebody that will come along and they will have a method which defeats the King's move. So what that is at the moment, not sure exactly. We're still seeing the traditional rise, climb, get height, and pressing through. So Michael Todd has come up with a decent strategy to counter that. He's keeping a higher pronation, which is preventing that climbing. So we'll see what people can come up with. So I'm excited to see over the next couple of years. You'll see progression. More people start kings moving. More people will start seeing the counters for it. So natural progression in sport. It's a good thing. Thanks.